Hi guys! Today we're going to discuss periodization. Periodization is the dividing or categorizing time into separate sections, and historians use periodization in three very specific ways. First, to distinguish one cluster of interrelated historical events from another in order to discover a pattern for change. Second is to identify significant shifts in those patterns in terms of discontinuities or turning points, which serves as the start and end of the periods. And finally, to highlight trends or events that appear dominant or important during a particular span of time. But of course, every periodization system has a problem. First, all systems of periodization are more or less made up entirely by the historian and are arbitrary. And second, labels are continually challenged and redefined. In other words, periodization is a conceptual tool that makes change over time manageable for historians by identifying big changes. Those big changes are known as turning points, or developments and events that occurred in world history affecting the most people. Three overlapping shifts across societies must occur in order for a new period of world history to be identified. First, the world map must change significantly. Second, new kinds of contacts must be established among civilizational areas. And third, new parallelisms or similarities must arise in patterns displayed by major civilizations. A great example of this is the fall of the great empires. That would be the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Han Empire, the Persian Empire, and the Mauryan Guptan Empire, which happened in the classic era of history. This fall represents the first shift as the world map significantly changed once the Roman Empire fell and power shifted from the Mediterranean world towards the Middle East and South Asia in India. Second, new kinds of contacts were established as Buddhism spread from India, Christianity spread from Rome, and Islam spread from the Middle East and India, and these three religions spread widely across the Old World. And finally, new comparisons can be made between the classic era and the post-classic era, as the Islamic world would soon replace India and the Maurya Gupta Empire as the most expansive civilization. Because all three of these shifts were met, we have a new period in world history. AP World History and College Board use 5 different periods. The first is known as the foundational period, from 8000 before Common Era to 600 Common Era. This is a huge chunk of time in which the Neolithic Revolution and Agricultural Revolution occurred. We had the rise of civilizations beginning with River Valley civilizations up to those classic civilizations that we just discussed. And because those classic civilizations fell and met all three of those requirements, we end up with our second period in world history, the post-classic era. This era is significant for the spread of world religions. Some, like Christianity and Buddhism, began to spread before this period, while Islam spread during this period. You can see how there's already some issues between the periodization uses. The political systems which followed the classical empires, Han, Roman, and Gupta empires, fell at different times. But by the 7th century, post-classic systems were emerging. From 1450 to 1750, world history enters into what's known as the early modern period. During this time, there's a significant shift in which China begins to lose its power as the world dominant power and is replaced by Europe. The Portuguese began exploring the coast of Africa in the 15th century, and by the end of the century, Europeans had reached both the Americas and the East Indies. Instead of painting their faces blue, wearing scratchy wool, and living in mud huts, Europe experienced intellectual, social, economic, and political revolutions that not only shook its own foundation, but impact other regions as well. But while Europe was coming into its forte, other changes around the world were occurring that would have global significance, such as the Ottoman, Safavid, Mughal, and Ming dynasties, as well as the creation of Russia and the end of feudalism in Japan. After the early modern period, the world entered into the modern era, which lasted from 1750 to 1914. This era included the Enlightenment, revolutions in North and South America, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and the second round of European imperialism. This is the time in history when students are usually most familiar with the events that occur. And finally, we end with 1914 to the present, also known as the Contemporary Era. This era features accelerated global interactions, the horrendous world wars, collapse of European imperialism. It also has the Cold War and its impact on former colonial regions, and also exhibits American hegemony or Americanism. Thanks, guys.